he placed something in my car, yo.
Capture the first off, putting something on the car seat where he then finds a after his camera turns back on.
We gotta find it. You know what I mean? Alright, this was in the back seat on the floor. Cigarettes lit.
There's no doubt that most law enforcement officers take their jobs very seriously. They often go above and beyond the call of duty to save innocent lives and bring justice to anyone who deserves it. But on the flip side, some officers break the sacred oath to protect and serve. Today, we'll be diving into the shocking world of dirty cops, where morality is out of the question and they think they're above the law. Brace yourself as we uncover the truth behind the times officers were caught planting on innocent people. In Tulia, Texas, 1999, a high-stakes bust sent shockwaves throughout the nation. On the surface, the bust was successful, but there was a catch. There was virtually no evidence linking any of the suspects to the charges. So, what happened? At the time of the bust, Tulia had an African-American population of about 400 people, most of whom historically came to work on the cotton fields in the 1940s and 1950s. As the sun rose on the morning of July 23, 1999, law enforcement officials made a huge bust and arrested 46 people, most of whom were African American. Although the authorities found no justifiable cause to arrest them, some of these people were profiled for having a previous record. The officers relied solely on the testimony of one agent, Tom Coleman, who was undercover for 18 months in the Tulia scene. Claiming to have made more than 100 buys during his sting operation, Tom earned himself the Texas Department of Public Safety Outstanding Officer of the Year award. Now the case went to trial, and all the defendants were given guilty verdicts and lengthy sentences. Losing hope, they all began to accept plea deals to hopefully get less time. But this is when Tom's story began to fall apart.
One of the harshest sentences of all, 90 years, went to Joe Moore, a 60-year-old hog farmer who has lived much of his life in this one-room shack.
I didn't even know nothing about a kingpin. I don't even know how a kingpin live or nothing. I don't know nothing about that. But I know they live 30 times better than this. No, 100 times better than this.
With pressure from civil rights activists, the Tulia sting was exposed as a gross miscarriage of justice. Tom was exposed for fabricating evidence and planting on innocent people. He was indicted with 3 counts of aggravated perjury, and the defendants were compensated with a total of $6 million.
A man named Tom Coleman, an undercover narcotics officer who arrested 46 people, nearly all of them black, and sent many of them to prison for a total of 750 years. That was until the governor of Texas stepped in and pardoned them after a judge accused Tom Coleman of being a liar who falsified evidence, a thief, and a racist.
Up next, we have the case of Floyd Dent. In January 2015, Inkster, Michigan officer RoboCop Melendez was seen dragging an unarmed Dent out of his car, pinning him to the ground and assaulting him within an inch of his life. Floyd, a Ford employee for the past 37 years with no prior criminal record, was pulled over for not making a complete stop in an area known for drug activity. After being brutally assaulted, Floyd was charged with resisting arrest, assault, and possession of narcotics. Floyd claimed that William and the other officers planted the substances on him, and a video released appears to show William pulling a plastic bag out of his pocket during the altercation. Now, this was not William's first infraction. In 2003, William was accused of leading a ring of 16 Detroit officers down a path of corruption. They planted weapons and narcotics on suspects, leading to the biggest bust of the time. However, an internal investigation later revealed a deeply troubling aspect of the operation. Evidence had been planted on innocent individuals. Even so, the officers were never formally charged. This revelation led to the dismissal of multiple cases and raised serious concerns about the integrity of the entire operation. It shed light on the lengths some officers are willing to go to secure convictions, even if it means violating the rights of innocent citizens. Of course, this means that Williams' credibility was already questionable, and Floyd's claims were not that far-fetched.
Floyd Dent was the only witness to testify today in the criminal case against the cop who beat him, now former officer Bill Melendez. He's charged with 2 counts of assault, a new assault charge added today, as well as misconduct in office.
Thanks to the body cam footage of the assault, a judge saw that Floyd was not resisting arrest or fleeing the officers, so those charges were dropped. But with the unethical help of an employee at the Garden City Hospital, Floyd's medical records were changed to paint him as a substance user.
There is a dispute over the medical records from the Garden City Hospital, not given to the defense, that Dent's attorney says were falsified, and he intends to sue the hospital next.
The Garden City Hospital, or at least a member of Garden City Hospital, conspired with these officers to paint my client as a user.
So the narcotic charges were not dropped, and Floyd was offered a plea, which he rightfully denied, as he said he won't plead guilty to something he did not do. He made the right call, as a few months later he was completely free of all charges. Jawan Niles started his life as an ambitious young man who never took himself too seriously. He dreamt of starting a landscaping business, but little did he know that a run-in with the wrong officer would take that dream from him. Niles was charged with the possession of cocaine in 2007 and sentenced to 3 years in prison. This effectively ruined his life because with the felony on his record, he could not find a job or even an apartment. It wasn't until 2021 that he received his certificate of innocence and was finally able to get a job. Unfortunately, just after this small victory, Niles' life met an unexpected end. Not gonna lie, Niles' story is a tragic one, but to make matters worse, he was among nearly 200 people who were wrongfully convicted by disgraced Sergeant Ronald Watts and his team of Chicago officers.
Judge has thrown out 44 more convictions tied to a notorious Chicago sergeant who regularly framed people for crimes.
For almost a decade, Watts and his team terrorized the streets of Chicago, preying on the innocent and vulnerable. They would plant weapons and narcotics on their victims and extorted money from them to combat the false charges. Watts abused his power as he knew his largely black-targeted population wouldn't be believed. It wasn't until 2012 that Watts and one of his corrupt officers, Khalat Muhammad, were arrested for stealing $5,200 in government funds. This gave their victims the courage to come forward, setting up a ripple effect on Watts' previous cases being vetted. And guys, the wrongful prosecutions collectively caused victims 459 years of their life. The persecutions have been moving swiftly to dismiss about 226 convictions that Watts made. Since then, most of the victims have rightfully filed a federal civil lawsuit because their constitutional rights were violated by Watts.
After they've ruined people's lives, think about all those folks who were innocent, all those years that they lost with their families, and being able to be in a job and being able to build wealth for both themselves and their families and their communities that was taken away by someone who told lies to garner their own wealth from individuals.
Now there is the case of Officer Samuel Lee, who unknowingly filmed himself framing a suspect. In 2017, Los Angeles officer Samuel Lee and his team pulled over 52-year-old Ronald Shield to be charged with felony hit and run. However, this wasn't the only intention of the officers. In the body cam footage, Lee is seen searching Ronald's pockets. Later in his report, Lee stated that Ronald had in his front left pocket. What Lee didn't know was that his partner's body cam would expose the truth. Another video captured shows an officer only known as Officer Gaxiola picking up Ronald's wallet from the street and shows it to Lee, who then confirms with Ronald that it was his. Gaxiola then walks back to the sidewalk and puts the wallet back down, walks over to the streets and picks up a small baggie with white powder. He then motions to Lee, picks up the wallet, and is seen placing the baggie in it. The bag later tests positive for drugs. Feeling proud of himself, Gaxiola bragged to other officers about what he found in the wallet. And of course, Lee backed up his story, saying that it fell out of Ronald's pocket. These two thought they were in the clear, but the body cam footage revealed the truth.
The officer is restricted from field duty.
Beck told the police commission this morning that one officer seen on the video has been removed from field duty. The department has launched a personnel investigation, and because of that, he says he can't make many comments.
This led to Lee being taken off field duty while the investigation went on. For those who don't know, this case was the first time that body cam footage was available to the public. The last case took place in 2008 2018, in the tight-knit community of Staten Island, New York, the community was shaken to its core when a disturbing video surfaced, one that revealed a horrible breach of trust within the ranks of law enforcement. To make matters worse, this was not the only infraction by these officers. In fact, they did it before. Here's how they finally got caught. Officers Kyle Erickson and Elmer Pastrin were carrying out one of their routine traffic stops, a thing that residents of Staten Island had come to expect from their local officers. However, this one would end a bit differently. In a seemingly ordinary encounter, officers pulled over Jason Serrano and the driver Lasau Kuyate for a broken taillight. Jason was ordered out of the car, but was struggling to move as he recently had stomach surgery. The officers then demanded to have his jacket, which he refused, shaking it out in front of them to prove there was nothing in it. After resisting the impromptu search, Jason was forced to the ground and handcuffed, which caused the surgical wound to flare up. While he lay there in agony, Officer Kyle and Elmer searched the car. They reported finding a small amount of in the car's cup holder and a small amount of narcotics in Jason's jacket. Jason was placed under arrest and taken to a hospital for treatment of his wound. After his 5-day stint in the hospital, he was understandably surprised to find he'd been charged with resisting arrest and possession of narcotics. Now, once he was discharged, Jason pleaded guilty to the charge of resisting arrest, but denied all the other charges. At this point, Jason's attorney didn't have the body cam footage, but the New York Times published a story about a similar incident that involved the same officers. So for this case, Lasau Kuyate was pulled over for a routine traffic stop. He admitted to smoking earlier, but knew that he no longer had any on him. Elmer searched the car and found nothing. Then Kyle searched and can be heard saying, "We gotta find something."
We gotta find it. You know what I mean?
For an entire 4-minute stretch, his body cam was conveniently turned off, but when it was turned back on, there was a cigarette on the floor of the back seat.
Alright, this was in the back seat on the floor. On a cigarette, it's lit.
Now back to Jason's case. Kyle's frustration was clear at the fact that their search was clearly coming up empty. At that point, he can clearly be seen placing a small amount of in the cup holder. What's more, the footage shows that there was absolutely nothing in Jason's jacket. In the end, Jason was one of the lucky few to have his conviction canceled, but there were other victims who weren't given that luxury. And so, as we look back on these shocking cases, we're faced with a distressing reality. The line between power and justice is blurred. The abuse of power, the manipulation of evidence, and the planting of drugs on innocent people have shattered lives and completely shattered trust. So, where do we go from here? As we unravel the tangled web of corruption, we are left with one question. Do you think that more people should film their interactions with officers for safety reasons? Leave a comment down below. Before you go, hit the like button, subscribe, and see you for our next adventure.